I'm out here starting to remove the 5.3 that's in my truck. As you can see, this engine has probably seen better days. It is probably completely full of dirt, water, God knows what else, but I'm sure it's fine. Okay, so I actually just pulled out the intake, and this is not a good sign. Oh, there's some more water in there. Yeah, this engine's not going to be in great shape. Pulling the engine was a snap. I think I only spent a couple hours and the whole thing just plopped out. Looking at it here in front of us, you can see that it's not in the best of shape. Earlier, we saw that it was full of water, and if we look closely, it is still full of water. There, and whatever. So we're going to go ahead and strip it all the way down. We're going to take the valve covers off, heads off, the remaining part of the front accessory drive. I'm going to pull the clutch off because I might have mentioned this or I might have not. The TR6060, wherever you are over there, is different from the R150 that was in my truck. So I believe the flywheel is the same. The pressure plate, I think I'm going to be able to reuse, and I'm just going to need a different clutch disc. In reality, I'm going to be installing a new center 4 solid streak twin, but it hasn't arrived yet and I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna have to make do with what I have and hope that however much power I end up making on the LS is not enough to overcome the clutch that we're gonna be using in this temporarily. So before we get to tearing down this engine, let's see what the oil looks like. It honestly doesn't have that many cycles. I believe it only ran for a couple 100 miles at most with this oil, so it should actually be fairly clean, maybe with a little bit of water. Oh, that's not good. Well, I guess I'll just leave this oil draining, and in the meantime, I'm going to start tearing down the rest of the accessories and the exhaust. I've got the engine down to the block, the front cover, the flywheel, and the heads. I went and pulled the spark plugs, and this one was full of water. There's one on the other side that was also full of water. And then if you guys recall, these ones still have water, that one and that one. So these intake valves are probably closed currently. I have a feeling that every cylinder that had an intake valve even a little bit open has a full cylinder full of water. So things are not looking good. I know there's moisture inside of the oil because I have surface rust right here on the rocker arms. I had plain water sitting in the engine and it's full of mud on the inside now. And in fact, as you can see, it's like clay. The oil you already saw came out all watery. The rocker arms on this side are also full of rust. That one's a pretty deep amount of rust. I'm very scared now to pull the cylinder heads to see what they look like. In order to take them off, I'm going to have to put this on an engine stand so I can take the chain off. And in order to do that, I've got to take the flywheel off. So I'm going to take the flywheel off, strap it down, and put it on the engine stand. I knew things were getting a little too easy. Check this out. So I've got to remove the old pilot bearing. I've actually reused this one a bunch of times because I've had engines in and out of my old truck several times, and every single time I've just taken the pilot bearing out, moved it over to the new engine, slammed it back in. But this last time, I don't know if I didn't go in straight or if I didn't have the back spacing set correctly, but regardless, this is absolutely destroyed. It has ran its last run, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, toss it in the trash, order a new one for a later date. And as you can see, I pulled out every single one of these flywheel bolts except for this one. And this is another situation where I've reused these bolts probably half a dozen times or more, and one of them has now given up. There's no way I can reuse this one. So I'm going to use a welder to pull this guy out, and then I'll use a welder to weld a nut to here, and then hopefully I can put enough torque to pull this bolt out, but we'll just have to see. Surprise, surprise, we have some pitting here, some more pitting down here, some pitting right there, But overall, the other 6 pistons, the 6 cylinders are all fine. At this point, the rust and the pitting is an afterthought. Check this out. We've got valve marks on all the pistons. These 4, those 4, and this piston in particular has a broken piston. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, what could have caused this? I know that the camshaft that was in this engine was in the 4.8 previously, and I never had any kind of valve issues. And in fact, the 4.8 and the 5.3 should be a similar situation because the 4.8 has flat top pistons, just like the 5.3. I've also reused the same lifters and the same rockers into the 5.3 that I did on the 4.8, so I know those are good. And it's not just on these 4, it's also on these 4 cylinders as well. So I know it's not just one lifter or 2 or whatever. It's something inherent to the camshaft or the crankshaft. And let me tell you, this is actually not the first time this has happened. This is the second time this has happened. And in fact, the first time is sitting right here. And as you can see, it was almost the identical situation, and I never 100% realized what the problem was. I had a different camshaft with a lot higher lift, a lot higher spring pressure, so I thought maybe that was the issue, and that's what caused the destruction of these pistons. So when I reassembled this engine, I decided to take that camshaft out, put known good parts in here, and the only thing that changed was the timing set. And then I assembled it, put it together, and it ran okay until it kind of didn't. Started misfiring, started knocking, and then I parked it, didn't do anything with it. So in an effort to try to figure out what's happening here, I went ahead and I put the piston to top dead center, and now let's look to see what the timing marks look like. And as you can see, the dot for the timing set is here. The dot for the cam is right over there. And if I back the engine up to line the dots back up right there, check out where the piston's at. Why is the piston down in the bore with it lined up dot to dot pretty much? Moral of the story is, next time I decide to use an aftermarket timing set, I should actually compare that to the actual piston position. Like a lot of people mentioned, make sure to degree your cam before final assembly. That's one of the things I failed to do. In fact, when this engine was being taken apart and then reassembled, the block was still in my truck. I had not even removed the block from my truck. I pulled the pistons out with the block still in the truck, and I reassembled it with the block still in the truck. If I hadn't been so scatterbrained, I would have taken the time, double check all my timing marks, then compare that to the piston position, and then maybe would have tweaked it or swapped in my factory timing set and then avoid this problem altogether. But now we are at a crossroads. What are we supposed to do? Where do we go from here? And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure. Like, this engine was supposed to be cleaned up, taken apart, put back together, and then dropped into the Challenger. And at this point, I'm not sure where to go from here. I basically have 2 options. Number 1, I can go on Marketplace, OfferUp, and see if I can find another set of pistons for a Gen 4 that are the same size as the factory 5.3 pistons, pull these out, drop those in, and then go on my merry way. The next option is to tear the whole block down to the bare block, take the whole thing to go get bored out, and order a brand new set of pistons, preferably forged pistons, drop those in here, reassemble it, and then go from there. The problem with that is I don't have enough time, and it's going to cost a little bit more money. The third option is to just go out and pick up another engine. I'm in California, so another short block should cost me anywhere from $300 to $400. They're not terribly difficult to find, and they're not that difficult to pull out of the junkyard, so that's definitely a possibility that I can do. Well, that's enough dwelling on this piston issue. Let's go ahead and flip the engine around so we can check out what the bearings look like. So the internals of this engine don't look bad at all. You can definitely tell that water got into this motor because there's a little bit of corrosion right here on the journals. But as for the rods, for the crank, for everything, I don't see any kind of surface rust. I don't see any kind of lasting damage. There's just a bunch of crud in here that if I ran this engine after the first oil change, I'll be able to get all that crud out of here. But look at the bearings. Like, they're in really, really good shape. Like I mentioned, there's a red spot for where the rust is, but you could probably just rub that stuff out of there and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. The bearings look like they're in excellent condition, and aside from the broken piston, everything else looks fine. So here's what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to be reusing the stock rod bolts on this motor. So lasting maximum power potential is going to be a little low anyway. So what I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about grabbing one of my old pistons that I had a problem with previously. As you can see, the valves made their own valve reliefs into the piston, but for the most part, it's still in one piece. It'll still be able to hold the rings. It'll still be able to drain the oil and still be fine. The only problem is that there's going to be a weak point right around right here. And if I apply any kind of boost to it, I'm definitely going to blow it up. The second issue is that this is the factory dish piston and this is the HP flat top piston. So I have the flat top pistons out of my old 4.8, but those are for a Gen 3 rod. And these are for a Gen 4, which means these have the little clips, the pins slide out, they slide back in, put the clips back on, and you can swap the piston no problem. On the Gen 3s, it's all a press fit, so I can't just take a Gen 3 piston, stick it on a Gen 4 rod, and call it good. It doesn't quite work like that. But what you can do is take a 4.8 piston and put it on a 5.3 rod, because the 5.3s have a longer stroke, and so they have a shorter rod. The 4.8s have a shorter stroke, so they have a longer rod. So what I could do is I could take this 4.8 piston off this rod, go grab a 5.3 rod, take that piston off, put this piston on, and then I'll have a flat top that'll match the flat tops that are currently in the motor, and then that one won't have those DIY valve reliefs built into it. The only question after that is, what is the difference in weight between the Gen 3 rods and the Gen 4 rods? Are they going to be that far off that the whole thing is going to just vibrate like crazy and tear itself apart? Although there will be a difference, I don't think it'll be that noticeable. The only other option, as I mentioned, is to take the 5.3 piston and put it on the 5.3 Gen 4 rod, and then take the flat top piston and throw it in the trash. The only reason I wouldn't want to do that is because this is a dish piston, this is a flat top piston, and now that cylinder will have less compression than the other 7. I feel like the difference of a half point in compression between that cylinder and all the other cylinders is going to be more noticeable than changing out the rods. So that's basically the crossroads where I'm at right now. So let me take a little bit of time to think about this and we'll go from there. While I've been cleaning up the block a little bit, I've decided that I'm just going to grab the 5.3 piston that I have now, and I'm going to switch it out with the piston that's currently in the block. As you can see, I've already kind of just cleaned it all up. I wiped the block down, gave the edges a little bit of a respray, so everything's nice and presentable versus the cluster of dirt that was on it before. Now we don't have any of that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the piston in, torque everything to spec, make sure everything is good on the bottom end, and then we're just going to slap this motor back together. Alright, so the bottom end is all assembled. I've got the stock pickup tube, I've got the factory oil pump, factory windage tray, even the factory rear sump oil pan. That's all bolted down together, good to go. As far as the oiling system is concerned, we are done. The next step right now is to make sure the heads are in decent shape. As you guys saw, we have the intake valves that were hitting on the pistons, so I need to make sure that none of the intake valves are bent. I'm also going to double check the exhaust valves, make sure I don't have any kind of leakage, and if I do, I'll try to lap them or find another valve and lap that one in. Point being is that we're trying to get this swap done as cheap and as simply as possible without a whole bunch of custom extra parts. As you can see, the 5.3 piston is also in here just hanging out. So after the heads are on, I'm not even going to think about it. We're just going to run it. The main reason for installing the factory pickup and oil pan is because I want to make sure that the system is building oil pressure. So the best way to do that is with the stock oil pan. I can put a filter on it. All the oil that comes up from the oil pan will go into the filter. The filter will filter out whatever's left over, and then we'll have oil to the rest of the system. And then with the oil pump priming tool that I have here, I should be able to spin the engine fast enough with the drill, at least enough to know that we're getting oil pressure. I'm just going to be running some cheap oil in here, and I'm going to dump it and throw it away as soon as I'm all done here. I've got this dirty cylinder head on my cylinder head stand, and I went ahead and I filled all the intake ports with water, but it looks like only one of them is leaking, and surprise, surprise, the rusty one is leaking. So I have a suspicion that I might be able to just clean it up very quickly if I just lap the valve. So I'm not too worried about this one. I'm going to flip the cylinder head over, and then we're going to do the exhaust side, although I don't think the exhaust has any issues. So I've got the cylinder head flipped around and water in the exhaust ports, and like I suspected, I don't have any leakage on the exhaust. Not even this one, which is one of the ones that I thought might have an issue, but turns out no leakage. I've got the second cylinder head on here. I already did the exhaust. I'm doing the intake right now, and so far no leaks whatsoever. So it looks like even though we had consistent contact on these pistons, the intake valves somehow are still fine, still holding fluid, and if they're holding fluid, they're gonna hold compression. So now that I know that when I do the compression test, if I have compression issues, it's not going to be in the cylinder heads, it'll have to be in the bottom end. But I needed to make sure that the heads were fine before we drop these back in here. So now it's time to clean these guys up, make them look pretty again, and get them ready to get installed. It's been a few days, but I've got pretty much everything cleaned up. I've got the cylinder heads in decent condition. I've got the other one right over there on the floor. I repainted parts of the block and then I washed it all down. I don't know if I showed you guys this earlier, but I took my DA with the fine grit of sandpaper and I just gave the deck a quick cleaning. I'm not trying to mill the surface or anything. I just was trying to get a bunch of junk that was on the surface, and doing so I was able to expose a lot of areas on the block that started to wear down, kind of like stuff like this. But I found even more of that stuff when I did the heads, such as this, some of that. So everything needs to go to the machine shop. Like, I need to take the block, got to go get it decked, I got to take the heads, got to get those surfaced. But we're trying to do this quick, cheap, and easy, and I'm going to show you guys how versatile these LSs are, regardless of how terrible they are. Originally, with a little bit of elbow grease, you could probably get these back into a pretty good shape. I already did the other side lifters, but I wanted to show you what kind of damage we were looking at in terms of moisture getting into the oil and wreaking havoc against those lifters. There's a little bit of like rust or mud. I'm not sure what this is. I've got a little bit of corrosion on the sides, and I had a bunch of junk down here in the bores, but I cleaned most of this stuff up. I got to drop the lifters back into their bores, pour some oil down here, run that junk into the pan, and then whatever oil settles in the pan, I'll drain it, throw that away, run a little bit of gasoline through here just to wash some more of this junk out of here, and then we'll be able to top the engine with oil and do whatever we got to do. So right now I'm just going to wipe down these lifters, and I'm going to start the assembly of the block. We're going to reinstall the old head gaskets, we're going to reuse the old hardware, we're going to reuse the heads. None of it has gone to the machine shop. We haven't bought a single seal yet. We're reusing everything. So fingers crossed, after all this, we're gonna have a decently running engine. All right, so I've got the heads fully bolted onto the block now. I've got the entire valve train fully assembled. I'm using my priming tool right now to try to get oil all the way to the top of the rockers, and I pretty much got it all done. Basically, you just take off the little gear that's inside of the oil pump. You slip this adapter in here, run a regular drill on low speed, and just turn it. And you can see that oil is coming out from all kinds of different places. But I basically just kept going until I had oil coming out of pretty much all the rockers. In fact, we are so good that I've already started making a huge mess underneath. Assembling the transmission was pretty straightforward, same as any other transmission. Install the flywheel, clutch, pilot bearing, followed by the bell housing, and then the transmission itself. After that, it was just a matter of raising the engine and transmission over the core support and then dropping it into the car. I did enlist the help of one of my friends, and he was able to come by and help me drop the motor in. And this is basically what we're looking at right now. The engine and the transmission are now in its proper positions. We've got the engine mounts resting right there and right there. So I've just got to run the 2 bolts in. But as for the actual mounting of the engine, that is completely done. In the next video, we're going to assemble the rest of the engine and see if this thing will actually start, run, and hopefully drive. So that's all for today. I will see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher, signing out.